Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. Catch a boat. We're going to go across the ocean and find out how it is that people are your next door neighbors here in Southern Oregon, Northern California. This is one of those stories that I know you'll want to know about because most of us were around in World War II when bombs were bursting over there. And this little gal was there. You were there and you saw them.
Yeah, I was 5 years old when the war started on September 3rd, 1939.
And you brought the accent with you.
A little bit left.
What's your earliest memories?
Well, we had moved.
From where to where?
Well, I was born upstairs in a shop. My mom had a shop and my dad had a general hauling business, and the war started, and the government wanted his lorry, his truck, for an ambulance, and they would have taken it away from him, and then my dad would drive it. Well, when my dad went to have his eyes tested, he had a scar on one of the eyes, and he couldn't tell an M from an N and an E from an F, so they wouldn't let him drive.
Oh.
But he lost his truck.
Oh.
To be made into an ambulance. So he got upset, and 3 weeks after the war started, he joined the military.
And E and F didn't matter in the military?
No, he joined the Army, and he was in the service 6 years and 3 weeks.
And you were a little girl without a daddy.
I was 5.
And you remember Dad going off to war?
Oh, yeah. Well, for 3 years, he was stationed at home. He was the driver for a movie star for a while.
Oh, so they let him drive even though...
Yeah, he was a military, you know, but he used to take, I can't think of a name now, but would take her places when he wasn't doing something else.
Sure, because they had the entertainers would come over,
yeah.
and somebody got to do it. But let's talk about your early family history. She's put together one of these gorgeous albums, and I'm just so pleased because, first of all, we'll start way back when. Who's this about?
That is my mom and dad's marriage license. I mean, that's the way they used to do it. I don't know if they still make them do them like that way now.
Where did they get married?
They got at St. Peter's Church in Thundersley.
Thundersley,
yes.
Thundersley. That's so, but this one is a copy, obviously a Xerox copy.
That's my baptism at the Thundersley, St. Peter's Church.
And
christening.
And all this is wonderful that you have this. In your family album are pictures of...
That is my grandmother. That is my dad's mother.
And then who are these kids?
The young man in the middle is my dad, and with his 2 sisters.
And this is Grandpa.
Yeah, that's my grandfather, my grandmother, and the children, my dad.
So they have a long line in England?
Yeah, my granddad was a cobbler originally.
You mean he made shoes?
Mm-hmm. I always used to wonder, in their big house, they had a great big long billiard table, and there was all these boxes under there, and we used to play in between all those boxes. Well, I didn't learn until about a year ago from one of my cousins. In all those boxes was all shoes he still had left from all those years ago.
Oh my, oh no.
And then he became a bookie. He did the football pools and the dog races and horse races. And the
cobbler turned, found a new profession. Now that's your grandpa?
That was my granddad Bowman, yes. I did not know my other grandparents.
Here in this handsome fella.
That is my dad. He was a bus conductor on a bus.
Oh, so
and this one, he was just 19 years old. He was a bus conductor.
Oh my! And you've done this album with flowers, and this is your artwork.
Mm-hmm.
I know about your other book, and here it is with, it was designed to tell the story of the community, right?
You could do a lot of journaling in that book, yeah, that's what I did.
So the front cover has
At the pub down on the corner.
a famous pub.
Yeah.
And now, did that survive the war?
Oh, yes.
But not everything in your neighborhood survived.
No, we had moved out of Granddad's there was two shops. They were joined, you know, and Mum had a little deli. And then when Dad went in the service, we moved to Grandview Road. He named the house Shirley Grandview Road.
Aw, Shirley.
And Dad was overseas then. I don't know, I can't remember what year it was. But
Where was he overseas?
he was in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and home.
Oh, my.
Yeah, he was,
And we only read about over there.
yeah, he was what they called a sergeant gun fitter. And he made all parts out of anything he could find to repair vehicles and stuff.
Oh, for cars, for trucks, for the whole. And his dad's lorry, you called it.
His lorry.
had been taken over as an ambulance. Just literally taken over.
Yeah.
Artwork.
My Auntie Bess did those. This is my brother feeding. We did have a goat at one time. These are air letters. They do them, then they photostack them.
Okay, this was little tiny correspondence that you'd get from over there.
Yeah, these are ones that went to my dad.
While he was in Africa.
While he was overseas.
Precious to have those saved. Somebody was.
And these ones, my dad did and sent them back to my mother and us kids.
He's an artist.
Yes.
Even the tiles on the roof. Of the 11th anniversary. He didn't forget a thing, did he?
Nope.
Remembrance, darling, on our. Who's the little bitty kid?
That's me.
Oh, Shirley, you are so cute. Now, Granddad, I'm sure that.
That was a step. That was this is my nanny. Mom had a nanny for me for a while, and this is her dad. And
now, did she have the nanny because she was working, or?
she was be at our house almost like a babysitter, you know.
And
she was
your mother's work was
Mom
out of the home?
No, she used to work the fields and you know, potato picking and red currants, black currants, white currants, and all that kind of thing.
We seldom think that someone was doing field work and had a nanny, but
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
No babysitters.
No. And that's you.
That's us three children. I'm the oldest.
Oh, my
brother
goodness.
John and Richard. This one was taken here in the States.
Oh,
That's what I looked like when I came over here.
tell me about coming over here. You've written, but I'm not going to read it. I want you to tell me. Why did you come to the States?
Well, when my dad came back from North Africa, well, it was from Italy. He spent quite some time in Italy. He got home and he was very ill. And they took him to Brompton Hospital in London. And he was there quite a while. His lungs were slowly closing. So they filled his lungs with oil to stretch them. And he was doing fairly well. He couldn't carry a 5-pound sack of flour across the street without practically collapsing. He was so bad. And they told him, or they told Mom too, that if we didn't get to warm climate, he would develop TB. Well, my mother had a brother in Southern California in Fontana. And so we came out to Uncle Laurie, and my dad died not quite 10 years later of bowel cancer at 45.
So the cure was...
It was completely different.
Isn't that...
And, you know, we'd go down into Palm Springs, and the hotter it was, the better Dad liked it, and the rest of us suffered terrible.
Oh, my goodness. So your dad had good years, 10 good years.
Yeah, in the States.
Where did the cable come from? We don't, you know, cables we just thought Western Union sent everything, but they aren't.
This is for my 10th birthday.
Wireless cable, and it says, Shirley Ann, happy birthday wishes, and that's from Daddy.
On my 10th birthday.
How sweet. And this is Dad?
That's my dad.
Well, you know, he just looks for all the world proper British soldier. Well, he's probably seen lots and lots of bad things and good things.
He used to tell us, you know, all kinds of horrible things that went on overseas. You know.
And maybe you didn't need to know him?
No, he did bring a Japanese sword back with him.
Ooh. But you have stories about your neighborhood being bombed, don't you?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm so glad you wore the plaid. It just looks like a good British wave the...
We lived in an air raid shelter for a year at night. The lady next door, we lived in a semi-detached house, Mr. and Mrs. Wood, and they didn't have any children. He was a policeman. And they qualified for an air raid shelter, so they had it put in our garden. And they sink them about 6 feet down into the ground. They're corrugated steel, and they cement them in on the inside and then put dirt on top. And you either plant flowers or grass on top so it couldn't be seen when a plane went over. And those things used to sweat terrible, and us kids were sick all the time. And so Mom said, I've had it. She said, if we're going to get it, she said, I'd just as soon get it in the house. So first night back in the house, and John and I could sleep through an air raid. We got so used to it.
Your little brother.
Yeah, the one next to me. And Richard was a baby, and Mom heard the siren air raid warning went, and Mom heard the plane coming. And she couldn't decide which one of us children to grab, so she grabbed my little brother. And she dove under the dining room table. Well, just as she did, the bombs hit, and the table danced on the back of her head, and she had a big knot across the back of her head. And when we got up in the morning, there was a direct hit on the big, beautiful two-story house on the corner of our street, and 3 people were killed in it. One just outside our back fence. The whole block at the back was the waterworks, where they like rows of Quonset huts when they had all our water. And one was just outside our back fence there. One took the front off of a bungalow, and the old gentleman fell out of bed and broke his ankle.
Oh my goodness.
And the other one was on an empty house up the road. The only thing that broke in our house was a mirror fell into the bathtub.
And Mom's head.
Yeah, Mom's head.
And you remember this quite vividly.
Oh, yeah. And our house was open because people would come and stay in our house that had time bombs under the house. You know, they'd drop the bomb and it'd be right close to the house, you know, and it hadn't gone off yet.
So your neighbors would say, you've got a safe house?
So people in the area, yeah. And then we had land army girls live with us.
What's a land army girl?
All the men were gone during the war, and they formed the Women's Land Army, and they worked the farms and the fields and everything. And the first, Kathleen and Eileen, I can remember their names, are the first 2 that came and lived with us, and they would pay Mom room and board. And then there was 2 more after that we had.
Did you have a choice of having them in your house, or they just...
Oh yeah, Mom had a choice, but Mom didn't go out to work because, you know, she did sewing at home.
Anything she could do.
To keep us all together and be at home. Yeah.
Now, because a lot of children were sent away.
Yes.
And
we were fortunate we didn't get...
Little 6-year-olds were sent away. Mm-hmm. You know, these pictures here, are they from your childhood?
Yeah, this is my grandmother's house. It's a 3-story house, and it actually was a rest stop for kings going through the countryside originally.
Oh, excuse me. That's... Does that mean that somebody had to do the cooking for the king? And
I suppose so. It was a very, well, I don't suppose it would be. It's still standing.
And at that time, it would have been a grand house.
Oh, a very grand house, yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
But that house sits, and it's got all little bungalows around it where the property was sold off, and here that great big house sits in the middle of it. It's really out of place.
Yeah, subdivisions a la England, huh?
Yeah, and these are where I went to school on the other side. That's a friend of mine.
Bicycling was a real big, important way
It still is.
in England.
Yeah. Well, gas is so terribly expensive.
We don't even understand what expensive.
$6-7 a gallon.
Yeah. And who's this?
Oh, that is a cousin of mine.
All dressed up, fit to kill. You've got bookmarks here, so let's turn to this page. What are we seeing?
Well, this is my favorite picture.
Okay, of you and
My mom.
Mom.
That's my mom.
Oh my, don't those costumes remind me of wartime? Only the skirts got real short in this country.
Well, that one is when I was in high school down at Chafee High School down in Ontario.
Ah, so what do we have?
I think you skipped one. Did you skip one? No, I guess you didn't.
Now, I love the car. Shirley, you were obviously showing off here.
Yep.
What's the story?
Well, that was my first husband's car.
Oh, I love that car. I almost could imagine a rumble seat there for us both.
That's my oldest daughter.
In your other book, you have like places for your own memoirs, your own. Show me, when did you make this beautiful remembrance book?
My cousin sent me that about 8-10 years ago.
So it's history.
Yeah, and it has where I went to school. In fact, the headmaster, Mr. Clough, only passed away about 3 years ago.
Headmaster. Doesn't that sound like
you know, the boys were on one side of the playing field, the girls were on the other. They didn't play together. You were in class together, but you didn't play together. And on both sides of the football field, they had air raid shelters. And if the siren went, you picked up your books and you went down to the air raid shelter. You never stopped studying.
Were they concealed from?
No, they were brick.
They weren't concealed like the metal ones.
No, not like what we had. They did have air raid shelters that you could have in your home, too, that you could put like in the living room to get under.
Oh my goodness. Now, do you know how the Americans were met by Brits over there?
Not very well at first.
Because
they flashed their money. That was the big complaint of everybody.
And they were a little bit loose morals too, weren't they? The soldier boys were pretty stressed out, and so they didn't pay a whole lot of attention.
They could be, well, of course the English girls thought they were so exciting, you know, so different.
Yeah, we've heard the stories.
Yeah.
Because over there, I mean, you never knew when it was going to be your last flight.
No. I mean, you know, we used to start out, there was a field we had to go from our house over to the school, and the air raid siren would go, and you see the German planes coming, you know, and here you are out in the middle of a field. So.
Wow.
We used to stand out in front at night and watch the dogfights between the German and English planes, you know, and stand out there and watch.
So the bombs bursting in air is not just a song.
No, and barrage balloons everywhere.
Wow. And your family, your dad was in, so that was what you had. Did you have a place you could have gone in hiding, or?
Not really.
That's just
you never thought of it.
That was just the way it was.
That's usually, you accepted it just the way it was.
What about Winnie? I just always thought that Winnie was pretty special.
Yeah, everybody liked him.
But he has another name besides Winnie.
Sir Winston Churchill. In fact, I've named my cat Sir Winston, and he's Siamese.
We really, I guess it goes both ways, that we reached out to Sir Winston when he needed help.
Mm-hmm.
And he never, I never heard an unkind thing about, maybe he smoked a bit too much and maybe he did this a bit too much, but our country.
He was a bit of a rascal, though.
He was a bit of a rascal. But at the time, we could have lost it all. We could be speaking German and not English.
Yeah.
So I give him a lot of thanks. I guess that's, now maybe you folks who are a little bit older than me know a lot more stories about the war. But today I'm finding out about a little kid, what it was like to be over there.
We used to go around collecting shrapnel to see who could take the biggest piece to school.
Oh, show and tell. Can you? Oh my goodness. Because it was everywhere.
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
That's just what you did,
Well, we saved up tin cans. We cut the lids off and smashed them, and we get money for saving.
Savings bonds and...
Savings bonds. Did you have those in England too?
When we had our coupons and the clothing coupons, if you wanted a coat, you got 20 a year. If you needed a coat, it was 18, and you went without until the following year. But I have, this is bragging, I guess not really, but I have kind of large feet, and Mum always used to get 20 extra clothing coupons a year because I had large feet.
So
I don't understand that, but that's what they did.
So the family got underwear, and I guess everything was rationed.
Yeah.
What were you hungry for as soon as the war was over? What did you miss so much?
Well, back then, a good steak dinner. In fact, when we flew over to the States, we stopped. We left London and we stopped at Shannon Island, and then from Ireland we went to New York, and it's the first time my brother and I had ever had steak. John was 10 and I was 13.
But what about fruits and vegetables? Were they available in
Oh yeah,
England?
yeah, because everybody had a garden.
What are they called? Kitchen gardens?
Yeah, but then my granddad's house was on 4.5 acres. So Granddad had all kinds of fruit trees. He had gooseberries and he had everything. So Granddad always kept us pretty well supplied.
So you weren't the hungry European, English one.
We ate a lot of fish,
Because who caught it?
Well, you just went to the fish and chip shop, and that was the one was the easiest.
Fish and chips, folks, was wrapped in newspaper.
Oh, it's the only way to have it.
Paper was so scarce. And so now if you go to a fish and chip store, they'll likely have brand clean new papers that have printing on it like a British newspaper.
You'd never tasted fish and chips unless you have it out of newspaper.
But that's wartime. You did without something else besides shoes.
Oh, yeah.
You did without a lot.
But like at the schools, the Americans, we used to get big bottles about this big of concentrated orange juice.
Yes.
And there would be 1 bottle a month. The school children got them.
Oh.
And you'd get 1 orange a month because they didn't grow over there.
Right.
So there was things.
What's it like now when you go to the grocery store? Do you see an orange and have...
Well, because I've got so used to it, but I know when we landed in New York, we had a 12-hour layover, and we went to Flushing, Long Island. It was the first time we've ever been in a supermarket, and then all the different odors, smells of food made us sick.
Oh.
Because we never, and we got a sandwich, and it was fried bologna. I've never tasted anything so bad in my life.
I wouldn't want that either.
But the breads here are always too sweet for me.
Well,
They use too much sugar in them.
I'm just thrilled that you came all the way out to Oregon on the Oregon Trail. How did you get here?
Well, we came up to visit my daughter that lives here and son-in-law and 2 grandchildren, and we went to Boatneck, and my husband got bored and he went around to the concessions as the real estate man there. And the next day we were looking at mobile homes, and before you knew it, we'd bought one.
Oh, that is just wonderful. Thank you for the 2 books you brought and all the memories and all the things that will now be on tape for your family to see. You've just opened up a whole new world for us. This is Better Life Television. We have history recorded from England for the very first time. Thank you so much for being my guest. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying thank you so much for tuning in.